Shalom, and welcome to Tov, the Jewish News Channel. My name is Ruchi Avital, and today we're going to interview Yissaschar, who is the head of the research department of the Israel Defense and Security Forum, otherwise known as IDSF, which recently had a very successful conference in English and in Hebrew. And it is the up-and-coming security organization, civilian security organization, which we hope to hear a lot more from in the future. And the question, I think, on everyone's mind is when you open up the television on any of the regular television stations, we see all kinds of former generals and other consultants in security matters telling us that there's no way we can win in Gaza. It's impossible to win, and you cannot defeat an idea, and all these things. Is that true?
Well, I don't believe in the spirit of defeatism, and let me just say, first of all, it's good to be with you, Ruchi, and we did indeed, we had quite a successful summit, I'd say, where I believe it is fair to say that you took a major part in with your great translation. And I think really the spirit of defeatism is something I've never really believed in. This is partly the reason, maybe the main reason for which Habitchonistim, the IDSF, Israel's Defense and Security Forum, was founded in the first place. Because I think for years they told us that we lost our momentum. In fact, we lost our ability to win. We lost our ability to prevail in war. And I think these people, I call them the October 6 people. The October 6 people, I think, lost their monopoly over security. I think they lost their monopoly in the TV panels, in the bon ton, in these milieu of people who are former security officials, and they have the authority voice to speak up and profess to represent what most of the Israelis believe and adhere to. And I think this is a major mistake, because nothing could be further from the truth. I think that what we represent, with over 22,000 members, is what most Israelis believe, which is that victory indeed is possible. And the spirit, I think, is at the core of the security components in this victory. I think one of the main things we're trying to do is not only to talk about security and not only to influence over policy, but also to to buy stocks. That is to say, long term, to build a process where the younger generation in Israel knows more about Zionism, knows more about our security needs. And in that sense, we are building this long-term understanding of Zionism and even security Zionism in that sense.
That's very interesting, because my sense is not only are they telling us that we can't win, they don't really want to win.
No.
It's like they've lost the desire to win. They don't know why we're here and why we need to win. And that's really discouraging but I think it's been proved that the younger generation rose up like a lion and absolutely disproved everything that they were saying. They want to win. When you see the interviews with the soldiers in the field, especially the reservists who are allowed to talk, let's make that clear, a soldier in uniform who is still doing his mandatory service is not allowed to speak on these issues in public. Is that correct?
Yeah. Probably.
Unless they have permission from the spokesperson.
Right. Exactly.
But the reservists are allowed to speak. They're citizens. They're not full-time soldiers, and they want to win.
Absolutely. I think if there's a dissonance that has become evidently more clear than ever before, is the gap between the younger generation and that generation of long-term reservists who are 20 or 30 years are out of reserve service, and they profess to represent what the Israeli defense establishment is thinking. I think, especially in this day and age, IDSF couldn't be more important and vital to the public discourse. And in that sense, look, I think the younger generation, maybe myself included, although the younger generation I think is 10 years plus younger than myself, it's quite discouraging.
Let's not go there.
Yeah, exactly. But they are becoming disillusioned with the idea of the age of victory is past us and so on. They want to win. This is a young generation who is, I think, is prettier, is more fit, is more with this spark in their eyes. I think they really don't share the same worldview as they that spirit of defeatism, as I said. But I get to meet a lot of them during when we speak to pre-military programs, mechinot as we say, and I meet many of them, and they say what we hear from our brothers and sisters in uniform, what we know that's going on in Gaza, people of our generation, they are in Gaza for two purposes. One is to bring back the hostages, and two, to defeat Hamas, but as a means to bring unity and cohesion to the people in Israel. And I think this is fascinating to hear from people who are only in their 18 and
what we call the
18 and
TikTok
19.
generation, right? We thought
Gen
they were
Zers.
glued to their phone screens and they didn't care what was. No, not at all.
Absolutely.
They get it. They really get it.
Full stop. They get it, and I think this, what we call Gen Z, right? We used to underestimate them. We said that they were actually this presupposition.
They are Gen Z. The Z is for Zionism.
I love it. I love it, Rishi. I'll copyright it on your.
You are welcome to take it.
I'll take it.
They are Gen Z.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Full
Generation Zionism.
Generation Zionism. I love
Right.
it because.
But you said that there's a gap between what the military commanders really think and what these has-beens or former generals think. But isn't there kind of a symbiosis between them? You have like INSS, which is filled with these former generals. Aren't they consulting to the army now?
Let's just say that whoever should be consulting to the military now or to the defense establishment is people like us, the IDSF. I think that we have proven to be correct, while I heard multiple others, no name dropping at the moment, say that Hamas is deterred, that we have gone through this equilibrium where Hamas understands that they have a responsibility over 2 million Gazans, and so they cannot play like the old game of waging wars and waging terrorism against Israel, because they understand it will cost them dearly. And I think this really reflects a lack of understanding of the real spirit of terrorism, the real founding idea of terrorism, which is if Hamas says, and Yahya Sinwar tells hundreds of thousands of supporters in a Gaza rally that we are going to eradicate the Zionist regime off the face of the earth, we never took him seriously enough.
We should listen to what they're telling. They tell us. They write it in their charter. The PLO has written it in their charter. They do not believe the Jewish people is a people or only a religion. We don't have a right to a land. It says it in the PLO charter. Just read it.
Absolutely.
I thought we taught reading comprehension in schools. They don't read it. It's a kind of bigotry of low expectations where we say we don't care. It doesn't matter what they say to each other. It's just for internal consumption. It's not really important. We know better. It's a form of racism where they don't really treat them as equals. And I say, if they're telling us they want to kill us, I think we ought to listen because they mean it. They really mean it.
Full stop. And I think over the years, we underestimated our enemies.
We overestimated our technology.
Probably, yeah, absolutely. Because we relied too heavily on technology, but we also failed to listen, as you said, to our enemies, what they actually say. And I completely agree. This is a form of racism in the sense that, us folk who are sophisticated and have seen the light will teach those
natives.
Poor people, exactly, natives, the indigenous, exactly. What will tell them, even the notion of two-state solution derives from that presupposition that we know what's best for Israelis and Palestinians. Hell, 60-70% of Israelis and of Palestinians reject the two-state solution. So,
for different reasons, but yes.
For different reasons.
Or actually for the same reason.
Absolutely. And when European diplomats tell me, we're kind of tired of this game, of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, how about you come, let's be grown-ups for a second, divide it 50-50, 67 territories, and the conflict has been going on for 75 years. How much longer do you want to, is there anything you want to herald other than conflict in the Middle East? Come on, let's put an end to this and let's go back to our bistro at 5 p.m., etc. The problem
is the bistro is closing soon because they serve alcohol and the Muslims in the neighborhood in Europe don't like that so much. I think they're going to get a wake-up call, or they're getting a wake-up call over there in Europe very, very soon. And they're going to find out that they imported the problem into Europe.
Outsourcing terrorism, that's a new form of economy. Now, I think that this is really is indicative of the core problem here. If you're telling me the conflict has been going on for 75 years, that means you and I share the understanding that the conflict has been going on since 1948 and not since 1967. And that's precisely the point where we fail to listen not only to Hamas, but also to Fatah and the Palestinian Authority, the people who are supposed to be running the future Palestinian state, the people who Anthony Blinken and the Biden administration are telling us that they are going to run the future Palestinian state with a revitalized and revamped and revitalized Palestinian Authority. What I told my colleagues from the United States who visited us, who were very friendly, but in a friendly talk, what I told them is that once we have a revitalized Taliban, let's talk about a revitalized Palestinian Authority, because I am not familiar with any way to reform a body who was founded in the first place for the armed struggle to defeat Israel, to eradicate Israel. In that sense,
this is unfortunately what America, I don't say they don't understand, I say they refuse to understand, because it's right there if you want to understand it. It's like UNRWA. UNRWA was created to destroy Israel. If they have a UN refugee agency, it's for all refugees in the world, right?
Yeah.
And the Palestinians have their own refugee agency, UNRWA. Right. And somehow they can do everything in that organization, including give next generation and the next generation and the next generation refugee status, but they somehow can't resettle or relocate a single refugee from among that group. On the contrary, they grow. And the purpose is, there's only one solution to the Palestinian refugee problem.
Revolution?
It's to destroy Israel. Okay. That's it, from you and me not to be here. That's the only solution. There is no, it's a zero-sum game from their point of view, and it's time that we realize that. And again, I don't think they don't understand. They refuse to understand. They refuse to see a lot of things that are happening at home also in Europe and now in America as well. But let's get back to a little bit more specifics, what's happening in Gaza. So we're hearing that Israel has is facing this tunnel challenge, which is the big challenge of this war. I saw an interview with, I think his name is John Spencer, from he's the world expert on urban warfare and tunnel warfare from West Point. And he was interviewed, he wrote a paper that Israel has amazing achievements in this war with relatively few casualties. Of course, every single life we lose is a terrible tragedy, but relative to what it could be or what the Americans suffered in Mosul and in Afghanistan and so on, much better. Can you tell us, how are we doing that? They're talking about flooding the tunnels and all kinds of other, do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so let me just say that the fighting inside the Gaza Strip in terms of even military history is unprecedented. The general you quoted is absolutely right, and I think even if you look at Yaron Buskila, who is our Secretary General in the IDSF, he's been heavily involved in the Gaza fighting up until a few days ago, and he said there are an estimated hundreds of kilometers of tunnels dug underneath Gaza.
Yeah, they say it's almost twice as big as the London Metro.
Unbelievable, yeah. Even much bigger than the Paris Metro. And I think that only shows us how much time they had in their hands to build. And money. We found documents.
And technology. Yeah. If they had channeled that technology, well, it's amazing.
That only shows us that not everyone is the same. That only shows us that not everyone strives to seeing the light and the Enlightenment illusion of the Cartesians and the others who say that, once, it's like the founding principle of the European Union, once somebody sees the light, the world moves inexorably, that's the word they love using, inexorably toward democracy and enlightenment. And I think that only shows us... I think
there was a gentleman named Fukuyama who made the same mistake about that.
Yeah, the end of history. Only problem is that nobody let history know that it ended. So
and I don't think they read his book either. I don't think, I mean, it's really a very, very fundamental difference in worldviews between, we can call it left and right, but conservative and leftism, that if you see the light, then you will understand, or there is evil. There is good and evil in the world, and some people choose evil. We're told in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, that man is evil at heart and needs to be trained to be good. That's what we as parents do. We train our children to be good, right? But we have to be aware that there's evil in the world. Some people make that choice, and this is what we're facing.
Even
Pure
the old
evil.
Persian, understand that? The old Persians with Zoroastrianism, with Zarathustra, their prophet who sort of underlined the difference between the good and the evil. and choosing good over evil is something that has been, a lodestar for the old Persians before they accepted Islam. And I think everyone takes it a bit differently, but the recognition that evil exists in the world is something that we have to understand. This, as you said, racism of low expectations, where you said because they are a minority, that is to say
or
Arabs
they're
and
brown,
Palestinians.
or they're not Western, or whatever reason is given.
Let's be frank. I'm a bit brown, and I don't think anyone, gives me the credit of, being the victim here, or as an Israeli, as a Jew, I'm not allowed to walk around the world with a T-shirt with Hebrew titles. I don't think that anyone, gives me the credit of, having the lower hand, having a disadvantage which is institutionalized or whatever. I think everyone expects an Israeli like me to act according to international law, to respect the laws of armed conflict, to act in a proportionate manner.
And a bit more. And
so much more. And so I think in that sense, let's not underestimate our Arab and Palestinian neighbors.
Absolutely.
They need to show full responsibility of themselves. They need to man up, really, take responsibility over themselves, run their civilian affairs in a manner that any civilization does. And in that sense, it's pretty convenient for them that the international community takes them as a babysitter in that sense, with all sorts of aid organizations like UNRWA, even USAID, others, whose role is to really, in the case of UNRWA, to eternalize the conflict. As you said, UNRWA has not only redefined refugeeship. UNRWA is really a branch of Hamas in the Gaza Strip. There are at least 100 members of UNRWA who are known to be.
That's probably a very modest figure, but yes.
Yeah, and I think.
We know of UNRWA teachers who were holding hostages in their homes.
I was in a TV panel with a person who told me whose father was held in an attic of a home owned by the UNRWA teacher. He was held by an UNRWA teacher in Gaza as a hostage. So I think we're telling ourselves a story where we have this international organization.
The other is me, we're the same, and thing. Yeah. I think you're right. I think it's time we stop talking about United Nations agencies and actually force the Palestinians to take responsibility for their lives. Agency is another word for responsibility. Yeah, no more UN agencies. Really take agency. Oh, we heard, I forget his name, the spokesperson for Hamas, who's not in Gaza.
Yeah, Ghazi Hamid.
Yes,
him.
Saying when he was asked in Arabic, why do you have tunnels for your Hamas people and you don't have shelters for the people? And he said, that's not our responsibility. The UN is supposed to take their refugees. Yeah. 5th generation refugees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're supposed to be representative of the Palestinian people.
So we'll talk about. We'll have to. I wanted to ask you about the details of the tunnels and things like that. I'm not sure we have time. Are they actually flooding the tunnels now in Gaza?
So they are really, as I said, it's unprecedented in military history to deal with this kind of challenge. What they're doing, according to publications, and I'm being careful here. First of all, what we know is that they found at least 5,000 tunnel shafts. And they didn't found, and they estimate that there are at least 5,000 tunnel shafts inside homes, inside backyards, and so on, in schools, in kindergartens,
mosques, hospitals,
in mosques, etc. There were soldiers who got killed by trying to uncover tunnel shafts inside mosques.
And that was in Jenin also.
In Jenin as well. So I think in that sense, the IDF has been putting forth technologies like flooding, as was published, other types of materials and substances, which we better not talk about, but also dogs who are trained to walk inside tunnels. We saw the videos published by the IDF spokesperson, and even face-to-face gunfights between IDF soldiers and Hamas terrorists. Underground. And so this really is unprecedented. I think even maybe in the same sense that in the 6-Day War, Western armies looked up to Israel and took inspiration in the age post World War II, where there's allegedly no more winning, and now a Western power like Israel has managed to win over the Arab armies. I think in that sense they're looking up to Israel.
So what are the achievements?
Such technologies in the tunnels.
So what are the actual achievements? I'm definitely not an expert, but I could see that Khan Yunis is being taken over much faster than Gaza City. They're obviously applying what they learned in Gaza City and perhaps in Rafah. What are the achievements that we know that a large percentage of the terrorists have already been eliminated?
Yeah, so we estimate that around a quarter of Hamas manpower.
Militants,
Yeah, militants have been destroyed, as well as over 33,000 targets over 10,000 Hamas members, and right around 70 senior Hamas officials. When I say senior, I would mean, let's say, a brigade commander and above. And I think in that sense, it is definitely impressive. We have sort of buried underground 6 feet under the idea that IDF can maneuver, can launch a ground maneuver.
Well, there was so much talk about a small, smart army. I think Ehud Barak was the originator of that idea, that we don't need to maneuver. I heard that they were about to close 2 armored divisions in the IDF, and that if this war had come a little bit later, we wouldn't have had them. And there's definitely, we're seeing the rise or the return of the tank, no question about it.
And I think these are, maybe, if I could just say that, the return of eternal principles that are above the fashions of the time. And I think in that sense, we're not talking about, we're 2024. People were shocked in 2022 when the Ukraine war happened. I wasn't shocked. Classic warfare can happen, even in the 21st century, where we're so-called, seeing everything through the screen. Real life dangers exist, and the misunderstanding comes from the same place where we estimate that any refugee who comes to Europe, any refugee who comes to the United States, is probably looking for a better life, and not screening enough people to check which one could be an undercover agent of ISIS, of Al Qaeda, and others. I think in that sense, we are seeing the return of the ground army, of the standing army, of the principle of the People's Army, which was never invalid, but I think it has been further invalidated by the success of this war. And I think after October 7, the understanding in the Israeli public has been reinforced that there is no substitute for a People's Army. There is no substitute for forces, boots on the ground. In that sense, I believe that if we continue like this, victory in Gaza is near.
Thank you very much, Ori Issaschar, the head of the research department at the IDSF. And thank you very much to our listeners. And don't forget to subscribe to Tov, the Jewish News channel, on all our different channels. Shalom.